Here are the top 10 fly fishing mistakes that you're making. Number one is that your fly is too big. This is probably a huge one because I see people fish these big old flies all the time and they're not working. Fish only like specific sizes of flies, and if you're using a fly that's too big, you are not gonna catch fish. Look, if you're in a hatch situation where you have this massive hatch going on and you have the fish just sipping on these little, let's say 22 size emergers, and you're using a size 20, that one difference, that one size up in the fly makes a huge difference. The fish just aren't gonna eat that. Let's say you're super hungry and you're just eating a conveyor belt of Skittles, and those Skittles are coming. There's different colors, they're kind of all over the place, but the size is very, very specific. Most people know exactly the right size of a Skittle. If you have one that's just a little size off, you're not going to eat it. Trout are exactly the same. You're using a fly that's way, way too big. And in my opinion, the size of the fly is much more important than the color of the fly, than the shape of the fly. The size has to be perfect. Once you have the size, in my opinion, that is the most important thing to get. In my opinion, the size is more important than anything else. You have the size as number one, and then you have the color number two, and then the shape number three. So if you have all of those off, of course the trout isn't going to eat that. But if the size of your fly is too big, and this is more specifically for trout than it is for like any other species like bass. A lot of times bass will just eat the biggest thing, but when you're specifically talking about trout, the size of the fly is absolutely crucial. So if you're in a situation and you have all your other So if you're in a fly fishing situation and you have really, really picky trout, it's probably not your leader. It's not their leader shy. It's not your tippet. It's nothing else. It's not your waders. It's not the fact that they're seeing you. You're standing up too tall. You're 6'3" and they can see you. It's probably simply the fact that your fly is just way too big. Number two mistake is probably you're focusing on the wrong things. You're not catching fish because you're focused on the wrong things. You're watching social media, you have all these different ideas about what's gonna work and what's not, and you get these little snippets of advice, but you don't know how to apply them. So you're worried about things like what type of boots you're wearing with your waders. Literally 100% irrelevant. I've forgotten mine at home and I just have to wear them bare in the water, which hurts your feet, or put sandals over the top of them. It literally doesn't matter. It's kind of dangerous wading. It's a little bit dangerous wading in the water that way, but what type of boots you have, totally irrelevant. The other thing is a lot of people are so focused on leader, having too long of a leader, too short of a leader. You go to New Zealand and your leader's like 16 foot long. You don't have to do that in most rivers, especially in places like Montana, a lot of places in the West. The leader, how long it is, the thickness of it is much less important than what you think. So as you watch this video and other videos that I'm going to put out, you're going to slowly learn what is important so you can focus on those things and stop focusing on things that are totally unimportant. Number three is that you're probably fishing the wrong spots. I see most fishermen are fishing in the wrong spots, or they're fishing in the right spot, but they're fishing at the wrong time of day. When you're talking about trout fishing in a river, you have to be dialed in on when to fish exactly when that hatch is starting, before it starts, so you can get into position, you can get all your stuff ready, you can get your gear all tested out, do a couple try runs, and just sit and wait and watch those fish and observe them. You could be fishing in the right spot but at the wrong time, but I see most people are fishing in the wrong spot, especially lakes. Lakes, a lot of times what's weird is not necessarily where you're fishing, but it's the depth that you're fishing. So if you're fishing below the fish, they're never going to look down to see your fly. Fish do not look down, they only look straight and look up. If it's right in their face, that's really easy. Obviously they're going to eat that. If it's up a little bit, they'll come up, but they're never going to look down. Same thing with the rivers. If you see all the fish are on top and they're just cruising, you can see the backs of their fins, their dorsal fins, you can see them come up and eat emergers. If you're fishing on the bottom, they are not going to eat it. That being said, fish in rivers, especially 90% of the time, they are eating right off the bottom. And so fishing in the right spots is absolutely critical. So the depth is really important, but also the wrong spots. I see people fishing in the wrong spots all the time. Water that is way too fast, water that is way too slow. Generally in rivers, what you're looking for is walking, wading, walking speed type of water that is going about the speed that you would be walking down the river. So you're going to be walking pace. Water is the water that you're going to be looking for. And right on the edge of where it gets fast and slow, that's generally the sweet spot. You can go to any river in the United States and have that information and actually catch a lot more fish. Walking speed water is where a majority of the fish are. And when you get to be really experienced as a trout fisherman, you're going to start to see these things, and it's going to blow your mind that you're going to be able to spot where the fish are and where the fish aren't. Now, granted, some of these rivers I've been going to for about 20 years, so I can easily spot that somebody's fishing in the wrong spot, which I love, and I will try to help them if they're nice and they're friendly with me. I'll help them and say like, hey, this spot is actually much better if you just want to come over here, or actually I'll be catching fish. I'll let them come and fish alongside me and we can catch a lot of fish together. But generally, going to a spot for a long time, I know the spots that are good and the spots that are not good, but generally you're looking for spots that are riffly, that are moving a little bit, just to get the food down to the trout, but not too fast, that the fast water is bringing it into the slow water and they're gonna sit there. Now, the best way to learn where to fish is actually to take note and get polarized glasses and just watch, not actually fish, but just watch into the water. Watch where the fish are during a hatch is where you're gonna find out exactly where those fish are. If you just went day one to a river and you didn't bring your rod down to the water and you're watching where those trout are, you're watching where they're coming up, where they're rising, they pretty much stay in the same spot. These trout don't move, especially in tailwater rivers. They don't move very far. They're probably a foot left or right in their entire lives. They don't move. So if you learn where they are, it's going to be very easy for you to go back and catch unlimited fish because you know all those variables of where to fish are all cut down because you know, okay, this, and this spot are where the trout feed. A lot of times that's in front of a rock. This is very surprising to me. In front of a rock, there's a little bit of break in the current, so they sit in that spot a lot. A lot of times right behind a rock, but you have the water kind of moving on both sides. And there's a little bit of a back eddy, a little bit of a back current, and they just gotta sit in that pocket water. Food comes to them, they can dart out and get that food and come back into the soft water. So once you learn exactly where those fish are, life becomes a lot easier for you. The next mistake is that you're thinking that expensive gear is actually gonna catch you more fish. This is true with golfing, bow hunting, rifle hunting, fly fishing, gear fishing. The more gear you have, it's not gonna do anything for you for catching fish. It's like getting out there as much as possible and putting your time in and realizing how to catch fish, where the fish are, and it's not necessarily your gear. You could take a $10 pole that's used off of Amazon, off of eBay, and you can go catch just as many fish as somebody who has a $1,000 rod or pole. Now, granted, the $1,000 rod is just extremely smooth and really nice and handles very nice. So if you're fishing like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 days a year, which 99% of people aren't, even guides don't even fish that much, you're gonna want a nice rod, or if you get a good discount on a rod, that's really nice. But having expensive gear does not make you a better fisherman. Trust me on this. You wanna have comfortable gear so that if it rains, you're not getting frozen. You wanna have really nice gear. I love this jacket from Orvis. This is really, really nice. It's like the one jacket that I would recommend getting because it is nice. It's not waterproof, but it is water resistant. It's fairly warm, and it's kind of a one jacket that you can pretty much bring all seasons. Fall, winter, probably not the best, but you can do it spring, summer, and fall. So expensive gear won't do anything for you. The next big mistake you're probably making is you're going home way too late, or you're showing up to the river or the lake way too late. When I fish lakes, I go as early as possible. For some reason, lakes always fish really, really good every single morning, and then they taper off. And then in the mid-afternoon, maybe they'll bump up a little bit, and maybe there's a hatch in the evening, but the earlier you get to a lake, the better. A lot of times if you can camp or get a hotel next to that lake and get there as soon as possible, that's gonna be your best bet. It's gonna fish better earlier than it is late. So the timing is absolutely key. A lot of times in rivers, I'll see people leave and there's gonna be a massive caddis hatch, and that caddis hatch is just gonna pop off and there's gonna be bugs everywhere. The fish are used to eating on the hatches. So there may be a mayfly hatch in the morning and then the caddis around 5 p.m. Caddis are generally an evening thing. And an evening hatch is really, really nice when most people are off the water. All your fishing spots are open. The fish are still there, but they're gonna eat in the morning. They're just gonna go dormant in the middle of the day because there's no food. And then they're gonna eat in that caddis hatch. I see a lot of people leave and they go back to their hotels, they go camping, they just go drink at the bar, whatever. And I'm there fishing by myself. Another thing that happens is a lot of people leave way too early because there is a mayfly spinner hatch. So mayflies are really cool because they have basically a pre-hatch, a primary hatch, and then the mayflies kind of fly off and come back and do their spinner hatch in the evening. That's where they come, they lay their eggs. And a mayfly will kind of spend its wings and go in the water, and it's more or less dead basically at that point. And it's easy pickings for these trout, and that's generally in the evening with PMDs, sometimes mayflies. With mayflies, PMDs, some of these other hatches, it's really, really cool to have a spinner hatch ready to go in the evening because I know I'm gonna have a main hatch in the morning, catch a lot of fish, target where those fish are located, and then come back in the evening and do the spinner hatch, which honestly is so fun. Your drift and everything has to be a little bit more perfect because they are dead. They're not actually moving in the water. They're just spent with these wings. And the trout will just sit in this skinny water, usually a lot of times in the back current where the water's coming this way, and it'll swirl in the back current and they'll actually turn the opposite way and actually watch those bugs just come like a conveyor belt, swing back around, and they're gonna eat them. So don't leave the water too early. It's another big mistake that I used to make all the time and I see a lot of people making. Another mistake you're making is not talking to other people. If you talk to other people, you're going to learn more about fly fishing than you ever thought possible. Generally, people are really nice, and if you don't talk to people, this is a mistake I've made for years, you're not going to learn about stuff. So learning when to fish is critically important. If you go to a lake, you've never been there before, you don't catch any fish, talk with other people and learn, hey, when's a good month? What am I doing wrong? And they'll help you. They'll give you flies. They'll tell you what leader to use. They're generally going to help you if you're nice. Don't just go rush up to somebody, plug up their hole, get in the way of their casting and ask them, hey, what's working? I want to know what's working. Or hey, can I buy some flies? People don't want that. People have done that to me for many, many times, and it's more or less kind of quite unethical in my opinion, and it's a little bit annoying. But just talk to other fishermen because you can learn a lot more about where to fish, how to fish, what's working, what's biting, what hatches are going on than you just learning yourself. So if you go throughout the season and you learn only what you've learned, you're skipping out on all that valuable information, all those mistakes that other people have made. You can learn 3 seasons of fishing in 1 season if you just get on forums, call the fly shops, talk to people, and just get out there. Fly fishing guides are excellent. If you hire them, you're gonna learn so much information. I tell them I want to learn as much as possible on this trip. I'm just going to bug you with questions. Is that okay? Where to cast? Am I mending right? You know, I want you to coach me and just be pretty aggressive on coaching me how to fish, and you're going to be a better fisherman because you're talking to more people. Just be nice, but talk to more people. Another mistake a lot of people make is they look at the online reports and they think that's how they're gonna catch fish. And I made this for years. I would just look at the report, which is usually like a month or 2 outdated, or it's just kind of a generic report on a fly fishing fly shop's website. A lot of times if you just look at that and you go out fishing, you're gonna be disappointed. Because yes, they can tell you copper johns are working size 18 because they want to sell you those flies, and they will work, but they are going to work a certain time of day on a certain river with certain cloud cover. Okay, so you kind of need to know a little bit more information. So just reading what's on the fly fishing website is not going to be super helpful once you get to the river. The other thing is go into the fly shop, talk to them, and spend some money. Fly shops are not going to give you a lot of information if you're just in there to pick their brain and then leave and go buy your flies off of Amazon or just get cheap flies somewhere else off the internet. They want the money. That's how they stay in business. And those local businesses need to stay in business. So just go and spend your money there. Yes, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. Maybe it's $2.50 or $3 a fly versus $2 online, but those flies will work and they'll tell you where to use them. So don't just go in and read the reports online and then just think you're gonna have outstanding success. So don't make that mistake. The next mistake is that you can't cast worth a darn. If you can't cast very well, you're not gonna catch a lot of fish. The farther you can cast, the better you can cast, and you need to get good at this. I used to practice in my yard when I was younger, just casting. I didn't have a lot of rivers or places to go fish, and I would get bored, and I didn't have a car, I couldn't drive at the time, so I would just cast in my yard. And when you get good at casting and line control and mending, you're going to be a very, very good fisherman. Arguably the best skill that you can learn to catch more fish, but if you can't cast worth a darn, you're not going to catch anything, especially if you go on a guided trip. You're going to cast and you're going to get tangled and your guide's going to get maybe frustrated with you, but especially if you're in a boat and you don't know how to cast and get the line tangled and that kind of stuff. That's how people fall out of a boat, is everything's all tangled and the boat moves and the wind blows and you can fall out of the drift boat. By the way, I've seen that happen. So yeah, if you can't cast, so if it can't cast, that's probably one of the reasons that you're not really catching very many fish, and focusing on maybe good gear instead of learning how to cast. It's kind of the other way around. Don't buy expensive equipment until you learn how to cast it, because you won't realize how good that equipment is and you won't know how to use that properly. The next thing is that you can't mend. Most mistakes people make is they cast out there, they don't catch any fish. Even they may have the right fly, the right leader, the right depth, the right split shot, everything's perfect. And you can see the fish move away from your fly because it is being rejected because you can't mend. This is most notable when you're fly fishing and you have like a hatch situation, and you can actually see the fish right below the surface come up and refuse it. It's most likely because you don't know how to mend. Now, if you don't know what mending is and you're brand new to fly fishing, it's when you're casting and your fly line is going down and you're not moving it, you're not changing it. Everything is moving. You have different currents, different seams, different water pressure that's coming down the river. And when you cast, you're casting over those 2 or 3 lanes of water. This is going fast, this one's going slow, this one's going fast. So you need to know to mend on the one and then maybe reverse mend on the other. It gets complicated and it's a skill that I can't just teach on YouTube. You need to learn how to do this. But if you can't mend, that may be the reason you're not catching any fish. And it's a huge mistake that most people make. Probably the most technical mistake that I can argue people are making when they're out fly fishing is they don't know how to mend. Huge mistake. I made it for years until I learned how to do it and do it well. And then my catch rate went way up. The other mistake is that everything is everybody else's fault and is not your own fault. I see this a lot, and I used to do this all the time. There's so many variables in fly fishing that it becomes overwhelming. Like, oh man, I didn't have the right fly, or my fly was too big, or you have this. I mean, you can have 9 out of the 10 things dialed down, but the last thing is, let's say you can't mend very well, you're not gonna catch any fish because you have to get that 10th thing nailed. Fly fishing is very difficult. It's a difficult sport, and I think on social media, it just looks like you just pull up to the river, cast that expensive fly rod out, and you're gonna catch an unlimited fish, or you're gonna fish just like the guy that's fishing next to you that's just slamming those fish 30, 40 fish in an afternoon, and you can't even hook one. You don't even think there's any fish in front of you. Where it's the exact same river, there's fish in front of you, you just can't catch them. So a lot of times it is your fault that you're doing these mistakes, but you have to get out there and you have to learn how to do them. You have to get educated, watch videos, read books, get out there and actually do it. A lot of times people think that, I see a lot of fly fishermen make this mistake because it's like, oh, it's too windy. The wind is getting in my eyes. The wind was moving my line around. The wind was moving the boat around. Some of the best fishing days are when it's windy and it's rainy and it's grummy and nasty, and everybody else leaves the river and you're there stuck alone, and those fish are just feeding like crazy. And if you stay out late at night, sometimes you can catch fish that other people can't, just because you're putting in more of an effort and you're not going home when it's comfortable. A lot of times people say it's too cold to go fishing. Some of the best times fishing lakes is when you're going out and you're fishing right after ice off, which is right when the ice is removed from the lake and you have just a look, even half the lake is available for food. Those fish are hungry. They haven't eaten in 2 months. So sometimes because it is cold, it is good fishing. Because it's raining and cloudy, the fishing is really, really good. So stop blaming everybody else. Stop blaming the weather, stop blaming your tippet. Learn from these things and learn what to do, and stop thinking everything is everybody else's fault, and you're gonna catch way more fish once you learn how to do it. And it's gonna take a long time. It took me a very long time. I've been doing this 20 plus years, and I still don't know what I'm doing most of the time when I go out to a new river, a new place, but I know the time that is required to actually dial things in, and I don't expect to catch fish the first time I go to a new river, or especially a new lake. So a lot of times going with the guide is going to exponentially help you, and you're going to learn a lot, and it's good for the business, it's good for the guiding business. So don't make the mistake of blaming everybody else and thinking that everything else is your fault or the fish's fault, or, oh, they weren't biting. I hear that all the time, and that drives me crazy. Oh, the fish weren't biting. They're biting, they're there. The fish have to eat. They eat every single day. It's just you don't know the combination. You don't know when and where and what fly. Once you get that dialed in, you're going to catch a lot of fish, but don't blame the fish just because they're not biting, or they were just sleeping that day, or it was a full moon last night or something. I hear all these different excuses. A lot of times that can have an effect on the fishing. It might be slower, but even slow days you can catch fish. And the other thing that I learned, it took me a long time to learn this, is that if you see other people catching fish consistently throughout the day, those fish are guaranteed biting where you are, not where they are obviously because they're catching them, but you can catch fish on a lake. Let's say if the guy at the far end of the lake is just hammering fish, those fish are biting. It's not anybody else's fault. The weather, the water temperature, whatever, the fish aren't biting, or they're just not coming in this area, or my boat scared them. It's because of you. If you see other people catching fish, it is up to you to figure out how to catch those fish. And honestly, just go talk to that guy. He's got a lot of fish. He's on cloud nine. He would love to share, especially if he looks down and you're not catching anything. Just be very gentle, be very nice. Hey, would you mind if you share a little of your secrets, or just give me a tip? What am I doing wrong? Is there anything you see that I'm doing that I can improve on? Because man, I would love to catch one fish, and catch that one fish and move on. So it's not always the fish's fault or that they're not biting. So hopefully this video helps you, and stay tuned for more. If you got a lot out of this video, or if you have more to add, please add in the comments. And that's all I have for today. Thank you again for watching and listening to me rant about fly fishing. Love fly fishing. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm still learning. I still love it, and I can't wait to actually go fishing. It's fall. It's fall time. The lakes are going to start fishing here pretty good. Bass fishing is going to go down, but the trout fishing is just going to pick up, especially in November. That's when I catch all my big fish in the lakes. So hopefully I'll make a video about that. So stay tuned for that, and thank you for watching.